Hi, this is Terry Samuel from PMML. Today we're going to look at the multifamily market for the month of January 2022 for the province of Quebec. Starting off strong in January 2022 with a high transactional volume for the greater area of Montreal. We've registered almost $564 million worth of transactions in a market where the usual average is between, I'd say now, between 375 to 400 million. So we have an extra 164 million that took place in the greater area of Montreal region. This is largely due by the fact that, first of all, there's high transactional volumes in the province right now for multifamily. It's been the case since mid-COVID. We're still in that stretch since the June 2020 up to now where the number of transactions are increasing, the price per door is increasing also. A lot of these transactions, though, that took place were supposed to take place in the month of October, November, and December, but we're late because of the transactional process, either stuck in the financing queue or we were waiting for either environmental expertises, certificate of locations. The professionals linked to the transactions, the lawyers and the notaries, were overwhelmed with transactions that were stuck in the pipeline. So what we're seeing now is the same process that we saw in the month of August for transactions that were supposed to take place in May and June and April that were pushed back to July and August. So the same situation. So what we know right now is if transactional volume is still up in speed. A lot of the transactions are done virtually now, which is helping out a bit on the process, but we're still late, and we do feel that the professionals on the market are still overwhelmed and a bit tired of the extra work. So the market still has to adapt on that side. The workforce must increase within the banks, etc., to be able to take on more transactions. And we're still in that adaptation right now in the market. So a large quantity of transactions in the greater area of Montreal. For the island itself, the number of transactions did reduce, but for the first outskirt of Montreal, so the South Shore, the North Shore, the West End, the East End of the island, the number of transactions has increased. So we see now that the buyers don't only look at the downtown core, they're looking at any opportunity that can make sense on the island itself. I now feel that buyers are less stuck on a territory, but more looking for a type of asset. They're willing to pay a price per door which is heavier, maybe a lower cap rate, something that makes less sense as far as return, but when you're looking at capitalization on a 5 to 10 year basis, that makes sense. So that's where the market is going right now. The Quebec City market has increased in volume also. We're at 64 million, which is pretty good for usually we're at 40 to 50 million in the Quebec City region. Gatineau, which was close to Ottawa, which has picked up, we're at 13 million. So we're seeing jumps and hikes in volume, transactional volumes for Gatineau. Gatineau, which is right across the river from Ottawa, very close to the Parliament. Hull and Gatineau is picking up in speed. Everything that's maybe, I'd say 15 minutes to half an hour out from the national capital is now picking up. We've seen all during 2021 a large quantity of transactions for land that's been sold. A lot of new buildings are being built. New multifamily buildings are being built in that area. And now we're seeing a pickup in speed in the sale of multiplexes, multifamily property in that region. So what happened there is that the price per door has been increasing with the hike in construction costs on the pieces of land, which is picking up and pulling on the values in the Gatineau region and the Hull region for apartment buildings, which is very interesting. And now we're seeing transactions closing that have been on the table for the past 6 to 9 months and that are not closing. And I'm going to be very curious to see if this tendency is going to continue and the rest of 2022. My little finger says yes. Let's see what happens. Sherbrooke, also a very good transactional volume. We're at 14 million for Sherbrooke, which is very good. Once again, in Sherbrooke, we're dealing with transactions that are now late, that were supposed to take place in, if I'm looking at my statistics here in Sherbrooke, the delay is, Sherbrooke is less late in transactional volume than the rest of the province. So, you know, we were at 39 million in October. We went down to 11 million, down to 5 million, and now we're up to 14 million. The standard Sherbrooke market in 2021 was about 11 million. So, which means that some transactions that we're seeing that are taking place in Sherbrooke in January were supposed to take place in December, but of course the notaries, the lawyers, etc., the banks were late in their processes, so now we are now transacting. So what we see is the multifamily market is still very strong. We're estimating a pretty important year in 2022. A lot of people are talking about like a post-war economy coming into place. I could feel that also, seeing that there's still large potential of increase in value for multi-family property in the province of Quebec. The province of Quebec is still under-speculated, is very metropolitan also in its nature. If you're looking at Montreal, Quebec City, Sherbrooke a little bit less, but yet Snow. So it's very metropolitan. So it's a market that's very close also to New York, etc. So we're seeing money being pumped in from New York right now into Montreal. Purchases being done in the downtown core, which is increasing the price per door, compressing the cap rates, influencing the parallel markets, and there's a little hike in price going there also. So once the offer and the demand stays as is, even if the interest rates have risen, I'm still seeing that hike in transactional volume still taking place. Why? Because there's a lot of liquidity available in the market right now. So even though the interest rates have gone up, a lot of people have refinanced assets at lower interest rates and have that money available. And depending on what program they are under, for example, if they've refinanced with the CHMC, the CHMC would ask them to either re-inject into an existing building the equity that they've put out of the buildings that they had, or to purchase something new, or to buy a new asset or existing asset, and that's what people are doing right now. Now, January is special because I'm seeing a lot of transactions take place outside of the downtown cores, but in different regions. For example, we have a transaction that is taking place in Sept-Îles. If you don't know Sept-Îles, but if you visualize the province of Quebec and you see the river, St. Lawrence River, going out, eventually St. Lawrence River gets very, very wide when you go east of Quebec City, and even when you go past a good distance up north, you fall into Sept-Îles. Sept-Îles is a small city. Its economy is mining and port activity. And a lot of the port activity, most of it is linked to mining. So what happens is whatever comes out of the mines goes onto ships, and those ships either go out of Canada, or most of the ships are going out of Canada right now. And most of what's going out is iron ore and main materials like that, which are taking out of our undergrounds and from the mines that are up north and coming through the port. And what's particular with the Sept-Îles port is the port is very deep there. So very large ships can come straight from the ocean and park into the Sept-Îles port, pick up all of the material, pick up that extra rate, sink down, and still have enough space to maneuver out and to go back out through the St. Lawrence River, and then either cross Atlantic or go to the States, etc. So the port activity is very high. The vacancy rate in Sept-Îles right now is 0. If you're looking for a good apartment there, you're not going to find one. If you want to buy a house in Sept-Îles, the prices have risen. Sept-Îles is a very small territory. There's an airport, there's a port, there's a commercial center, and then you have housing, and the rest, there's nothing outside of that. So I would probably be not surprised to see new dwellings being built in Sept-Îles. This portfolio that sold was of a large size. In Sept-Îles, there's a lot of large property owners that own a lot of property. A lot of them own 500, 600, 700 doors. There's not many small property owners that own multifamily buildings. This one here the seller owns 500 doors, a little bit all over the province of Quebec, and sold to another owner that owns about 400 doors, mostly in the region of the capital region of downtown Quebec, which is where the parliament is in Quebec City. So that's where he owns most of his assets, and it was only natural for him to pick up this asset on that side. And what's interesting here is that we have 246 doors that were sold, 22 buildings, a lot of 5.5s, a lot of 4.5s, and most of that was cottages, but that were rented. So many cottages, like 2-3 floors high in a multifamily building, that were rented out, and that's a particular asset for that area, because if you're working in mines and you can't find a home to buy, well, if you could have an apartment that's on 2 or 3 floors, it makes a lot of sense. So it's basically like small houses that were sold, and of course some buildings. The assets were sold heated. That means that the tenants in that area, it's much colder in Sept-Îles. It's up north, so a lot of the tenants like to have the hot water included into their charges. Some like to have the heating. So if you have the energy costs included into the rents, it makes a lot of sense. And for the tenants, it keeps the rent stable for 1 year. Your energy costs are stable. So it makes a lot of sense. Large transaction, $26 million worth in total, close to $106,000 per door, which is on the high side for that region, because the average is between $65,000 per door to $70,000 per door in that area. And this is going to completely change the nature of transactions that are going to take place in Sept-Îles. A transaction now, I'm going to bring you to Quebec City. In Quebec City, on the south shore of Quebec City, you have what we call Lévis, which is a city which is right across the river, a little bit like what you would have in Ottawa versus Gatineau. You just cross the bridge. Same thing, the bridge is larger, of course, in Quebec City. So Lévis has picked up much in value. I remember when I began in my career, Lévis was not that popular, but now being that close to Quebec City, and the fact that now they're building a lot of new assets in Quebec, new buildings at high rent values, it makes it that a lot of the tenants are looking to go towards Lévis. Here we have an asset, we have a portfolio that sold close to $19,700,000. 185 doors, closely about 186 doors actually, a little less than $106,000 per door, which was a very good price. Now, a lot of these assets are very, very large. They're large buildings, 3 stories above ground, 1 story for the basement. Most of them were renovated already. Very interesting asset to buy. Very close to also accommodations, transportations, and everything that has to do with commercial for tenants if they want to go buy something, etc. A lot of commercial activity in that area. So it makes a lot of sense for the tenants to go there. Would made a lot of sense for the building owner that has most of his assets in Quebec City to buy this asset also, and to just add it to his portfolio. So very nice transaction here. Very typical of what I'm seeing in the market these days. I'll bring you now to Saint-Jean-sur-le-Richelieu, which is south of Montreal, say a good 45 minutes from downtown by highway. It's on the south shore, and it's in a city where we have a large military base, the Saint-Jean military base, which is an Air Force base, Canadian Air Force base. There's also hospital amenities. There's a large industrial district in that area. And we have a portfolio that's sold very, very close to, in the downtown of Saint-Jean, which is mostly apartment buildings, some commercial access. We have the hospital there. And this asset sold very, very close to the hospital. A company that owns most of his assets in Saint-Jean, some in Montreal, some on the south shore of the Champlain Bridge, which is close to downtown Montreal also, that's selling to this investor, a younger investor that's been very aggressive in the market, meaning in the sense that he's been purchasing a lot of buildings in the past years. Always looking at the opportunity. First of all, looking at the area. I remember in the beginning of his career, he was more specific on, I want something close to the downtown core and specific areas. And now I feel that he's at another point in his career where he sees the opportunity of buying potential in a district. So once it's an urban area, it makes sense for him to purchase. This individual has more than 1,000 doors. Has a very, very good reputation on the market, is a good closer for us real estate brokers. And this asset made a lot of sense because we're talking about 5 buildings, about 150 doors, sold to about close to 146,000 per door, which is more on the high end for the Saint Jean area. But when you're looking at the opportunity to increase the rents that these assets have, the fact that they're very close to one another, they have an in-ground pool, some buildings have elevators, indoor garages, outdoor parking spaces. It just made sense to buy this asset and to control the rental value in that area. And knowing this buyer is probably going to do renovations in the units, and a lot of the tenants in the area have non-renovated units. So it's going to make the asset very, very a good opportunity for tenants to go move in there, a good opportunity maybe for the owner to get rid of less paying tenants and to upscale the value in rents. Interesting transaction. Just one little point also is that these buildings are concrete, and there's not much concrete for sale in that area. So good transaction. Now I'm going to bring you back to Lévis. I don't usually speak about Lévis, and I don't usually speak about transactions that are outside of the downtown cores, because that's where our most interesting transactions to convey to the market are. But in this case, I must insist on the fact that Lévis is picking up a lot in value, like other secondary major cities in the province of Quebec. For example, Sherbrooke, Gatineau, Trois Rivers, etc. So, and I'm seeing a lot of REITs and private institutions starting to buy outside of the cores, which means that as a buyer, the responsibility of the buyer is to say, okay, I'm looking for a specific area. Maybe I should change my criteria. And when I'm looking at the buyers that have made the most money in the past last years, that have most assets these days, are the buyers that are always remodeling their model. Taking the model that exists and saying, is that model the right model for me? The market is mutating, is changing. Should I change my model? And we have to be in a dynamic situation instead of a static vision of the market. We have to be dynamic. And if you're dynamic and you change your way of seeing things and doing things, well, in that case, you'll get more asset and your purchases are going to become more lucrative in time, because you're going to just be buying the right building at the right place at the right time, instead of trying to find the right building in a certain district where there's probably no buildings left for sale. So another transaction in Lévis, an owner from Quebec City, again buying from another owner in Quebec City, a transaction of close to 115 doors, done at $6.6 million, very, very low price per door. This transaction went for below $57,000 per door, which is, I'm guessing that there was probably no professional in this file, but very lucrative buy for the buyer. Then, I would like to finish my top 5 with a transaction that took place with a concrete building. I always like to talk to you about these larger assets that are sold. A transaction that took place at 14 million and 3/4, close to 195,000 per door. A 7-story building, concrete, some interior garage spaces. The main floor is commercial. You have a laundromat, you have many restaurants in that building. The outside, the brickwork was done, some balcony work left to be done, but most of it done. An asset which is the exterior, the bones of it is very solid. I have had a chance to meet the owner. I had a chance to visit the asset also, and to do some due diligence on it. So very interesting asset. Now, what's interesting here is there were several offers at the table at the same time for this asset, and there was a good relationship between one of the buyers and the owner. And the way the buyer presented his file, even though the buyer had less assets than the other buyer, made a lot of sense for the owner. The owner was a private owner. This asset went through his family, from his father to the children, to this person that was selling and his sister, etc. It was a family-oriented business. And there was a lot of chemistry between the buyer and the seller. The buyer conveyed his message to the seller, and the seller did recognize himself in the buyer, and that helped out in the transaction. Of course, the buyer started off very small in his career. It was a small group of buyers. They used to work with room housing, which is a very tough market in multifamily. Room housing, first of all, the financing is difficult. Second of all, the clientele is very difficult to manage because it's more or less a poor clientele, large rotation, at least in the province of Quebec, large rotation. And through time, these buyers were able to buy better and better assets and pick up some investors to work with them, and now becoming independent. After many years of hard work, they were able to buy this concrete asset. Very, very nice transaction. What's particular about it, it's very close to, for those who know Montreal, the Jean Talon market, which is an outside market in summertime. It goes inside in wintertime. It's in the Italian district of Montreal. So it's a place where people like to live because of the lifestyle, etc. There's a subway station, a metro station very, very close by. Good quality of life, and definitely, even though the purchaser bought the asset $195,000 per door for an older asset like this one, construction 1965, there's a large upscale in value possible on the rent increases and on the optimization of the net income and the reduction of the op expenses on the building. So made a lot of sense. So if we recap, a very strong January market, a lot of transactions that took place outside of the downtown cores, either in the first outskirts or again of the major cities, or again in the regions. We're seeing a lot of REITs, private investment funds, and major buyers starting to buy outside of the main cores. Large capacity to increase the rents. Once again, we're going out of the Micron version of COVID, but still there's a lot of opportunity because a lot of people are now working from home. Don't get me mistaken, the downtown cores are definitely going to pick up. We're hearing about reopenings. We're still seeing a lot of towers being built in downtown Montreal, a lot of new asset being built in Quebec City, a lot of new asset being built in Gatineau. Do not let go of the downtown cores, but what's interesting here is to see, okay, wait a minute, we have large-scale buyers buying outside of the downtown cores, which is going to make the province of Quebec very interesting as far as a model, because the province of Quebec is still under-speculated value-wise. Although you're paying a lower cap rate, you have to look at the potential you can bring out of the product and start looking at, instead of doing projections on the 5-year term, doing projections on the 10-year terms. And that's going to make a whole difference. So let's see where the market's going to continue in February. From there on, I wish you a great day. Contact me if you have any questions on the market. I'm only an email away or a phone call away. Also, go see our dedicated website for the sale of land, the landdev.ai. For our smaller buildings, you could go on goplex.ca. And for our mid-scale to larger assets, pmml.ca. Have a great day.